Like a mother spider, the Nintendo Switch eShop births all sorts of beautiful game babies. You know it's going to be a great video when we start with a pregnant insect joke. And with that many offspring, there's bound to be some runts of the litter. Those pass-worthy titles that help hide the hidden gems. They just cover them up because of their quantity. And Nintendo has been putting tons of really high-powered AAA titles onto store shelves, lending some love to help out the brick and mortar. Unless you're GameStop, then you're just struggling all over. But with all that going on, I thought it was high time I highlighted some really awesome eShop games that you may have missed. Today we've got 7 gems that have been covered up, and I am diving deep into the caves of the eShop, clawing around, clambering through to find you the games that are not only cheaper, but might also be a ton of unexpected fun. Let me know in the comments down below which of these games you think looks the coolest, and hit that like button if you enjoyed the video and love to be kept up to date on the eShop titles that are worth your time. There's so many. I cannot believe that there still are this many weekly releases. I mean, it's so hard to sift through, and unless you're going to spend hundreds of dollars, how are you even supposed to do it? Well, that's why I'm doing it for you. Diving deep into these waters, let's get on to our list. We're going to start things off with Tiny Racer. It is a slot car tension fest that comes with its very own track editor. It's brought to you by All In Games, and they're actually sponsoring this video. They came to SwitchForce and said, would you like to check out our little car game? And I said, sure, I'll give it a go. And then I was blown away by how much fun I had and how addicted to this title I got. It made me wonder, like, am I missing a bunch of super cool stuff while I spend all my time on Astral Chain, Mario Maker 2, and even Celeste Chapter 9? The answer was definitely yes. I found a lot of games that have released recently that are actually kind of a blast, and you might not even know these games exist. So I will wave the flag for these underexposed indie experiences, because you need to know about Galasso, heaveho, and Wilmots Warehouse. But first, let's get back to Little Racer. I'm addicted to this game because you got to be perfect. You gotta feather that gas pedal so perfectly to ensure that you go fast enough to beat everybody and unlock the next course, but not too fast so that you spin out and waste valuable seconds. It's a game where every mistake counts. There are 30 tracks, 10 different worlds, so it's always changing up. And I love that each track is like this little micro scene that they built block by block. And it looks like that because they actually did. And there's a track editor where you can go and make your own tracks. It's such a throwback to those old Hot Wheels days where you would build your own tracks and race your cars, sending them spinning out as you threw them way too fast for what the track could handle. That's exactly what Little Racer is like, except now you can play it with up to 3 other friends or against the computer. And for these arcade type experiences, I want to just milk every ounce of skill that I possibly can out of my body and make sure I get the top score, the best time, defeat everybody. You gotta watch out for Yetis swiping the track. You gotta watch out for whales jumping and sliming the track. You gotta watch out for chickens crossing the track. These tracks can't catch a break. You can build a track with no obstacles if you would like, but it's a lot more fun when you have to switch lanes and get to see people wipe out every other corner. It's got that pull your hair out gameplay where you make a mistake on lap number 4, you ran into the dang chicken and you think it's over. But if you've got the mental fortitude of a true racer, if you're able to persevere and play flawlessly till the finish line, you just might win. Because whether it's snow, sea, or desert, you don't know if your opponent is gonna run into a Yeti, a whale, or a camel. They may falter and flounder and you might just find yourself on that podium. As intense as I've made it for myself, it's honestly a pretty chill time. The music and visuals are laid back, and I like watching the little cars go round and round. It's obviously very different from Mario Kart or Fast RMX, but if you've got that addictive personality type, if you like to shoot for the top score, if you like to just build stuff, because the track editor is really neat. You can make the cars jump huge gaps, spin through some tight loops, create multi-layered courses. It's a really good way to spend $15.99. Now, if you own a Nintendo Switch and you're a human being, you've probably been waiting for Super Mario Strikers to hit our system, because sports with Mario are just that much better, and soccer with Waluigi is unmatched. Well, if you've been waiting for this game, then keep waiting and probably wait a while because it's not coming anytime soon. But Galasso does a good job of getting Close. This is bite-sized soccer with a little bit of a bite, because it does include power-ups. Now, they're nowhere near as grand or electrifying as what we saw in Super Mario Strikers, but it does include real countries, real jerseys, and much more realistic soccer action, until they start dropping power-ups in randomly, and you've got super speed, super tackle, or even super shot. Quick hit sports titles are a dime a dozen, but what pulls me to this one is the art style, the authenticity, and then honestly the difficulty. I like that it is very challenging to score a goal. Now here is where it separates itself from Super Mario Strikers, because in the recent entry you could score 6 times at once. Here you'll be lucky if you get 1 or 2 goals in an entire game, but it makes the work and the wait all the more worthwhile. I think if this was really easy to score and just drop the power-ups in and it made it feel like a win button, that wouldn't be much fun. It's the fact that even with the power-ups, it still requires supreme skill and awesome antics in order to push the ball behind the line. Just like Tiny Racer, Galasso is a local multiplayer only type experience, but because of the quick match times and because of the arcadey action, I think I'd rather trash talk my opponent next to me on the couch versus across Ethernet lines. The game almost feels like a direct response to the fact that EA and FIFA 20 chopped the Volta modes out of the Switch version. That's the part of the game I was most looking forward to, and it's just not there. So if you want something similar but don't want to dish out for the full FIFA 20, you can grab Galasso now for $12.74. I do gotta point out that Galasso glitched out for me after my first ever goal. Now, I don't know if my celebration was just that embarrassing or if the game was trying to get excited with me, but it's charming enough that it pulled me back in for another game despite the little bug. You might have heard of our next game, Creature in the Well, but it still deserves a spot in the sun because it's doing something totally different from the rest. It's basically a pinball dungeon crawler, which as far as I'm aware is a whole new genre. And it accomplishes this with a style all its own. Tons of pizzazz. I love how they separate the different levels by color scheme. It's visually arresting, and they do this really neat thing with the camera that I can't quite pinpoint, but I think it's how they keep the world completely interconnected versus separate rooms, so when you navigate down narrow hallways or jump down a chasm, it just looks super cool. The action is all pinball all the time, and it can get a bit repetitive, especially since many of the paths look similar, but you'll be using these balls to knock down barriers, complete challenges, and eventually beat down boss battles. That's where the game shines the most. I think it's the most ingenious and unique when the creature from the well reaches up, grabs your platform, yanks you down, and puts you through a series of very tough trials that you have to complete with pinball mechanics. Now thankfully, there's a bunch of different weapons which helps keep things fresh. Some of these even have special abilities, allowing you to be pinpoint precise in your targeting, or helping you earn back some health as you go. The game is surprisingly challenging, and it picks up real quick. Thankfully, they do this smart thing where you don't have to complete every challenge, just most of them. You're trying to earn these electric points, these lightning points, whatever they are, you use them to open doors. But you don't need to have every point available in the game, so if you find a challenge in a room too tough, you can skip it. The reason they're so difficult is either A, because they're throwing a lot of obstacles at you that you have to avoid as you try to be accurate with your pinball strikes, or because of really aggressive timers. I'm talking like knock down these 4 targets in 3 seconds. Or hit this target, then you have 1.5 seconds to get the next, 1.5 seconds to get the next. It really pushes you. I wish the game was a bit better about telegraphing whether it was my skill that needed to level up, or if I just needed to progress further and unlock a better weapon. Sometimes it's kind of unclear, and that can make things frustrating. But when that happens, I just double down on the lore. It's one of my favorite aspects about Creature in the Well, and one of its most surprising. There is a very cool story here beneath the surface. Quite literally, because that's where the creature lives. Something really messed up went down and everyone has kind of vanished. But why, you wonder? Well, it's told through text logs and this real neat frog who sweeps the floor at the base of the mountain. He exists by the healing pool, which is a very serene experience in and of itself. But I love that a game like this, about smashing balls and taking down barriers and talking to this really ornery creature, also has this deep story that seems somber and also mysterious. When you hit your stride and get into a good rhythm, the pinballing is almost symphonic. It's super satisfying to see the balls ricochet between a bunch of targets, acquiring a ton of those electric points. And while it's undeniable that Creature in the Well is a bit repetitive, I think the fact that it's so stylish, that it cost $15, and that it's trying something decidedly different from the rest helps it earn a pass. I've enjoyed my time with it a lot, and I'm glad that they took a risk rather than using a far more familiar set of mechanics. Wilmots Warehouse. Where the heck do we even begin with this one? It's like a very tricky game to describe. If I bullet pointed it out for you, I don't know if you'd even understand what's going on, because you're this little happy cube and you're separating products that are delivered to your warehouse and then delivering them to happy guests who just might want a cup of hot cocoa, a clock, or maybe a bird and a lemon. Anyhow, it's very relaxing. It's almost cathartic in a way. It's kind of like a Zen game that I don't know if it's super fun or more just enjoyable, because the mechanics are very simple. You are a square, literally, dragging other squares around, separating them. At times it can kind of sound like a third grade math exercise, but I promise you, there is something so relaxing about the organization and structure of this game, especially if you're a person that doesn't carry that over into their real life. Wilmot is a really nice guy to be around. And the more goods you deliver on time and even early, you'll earn stars that can be spent on small upgrades. Maybe you'll be able to carry more squares, or maybe you'll create more space within your warehouse. The game slowly unlocks its controls and mechanics, giving you a dash and the ability to carry a whole lot of product, but I don't really know what you're going for in the end. I'm not sure if there is an end or you just progress. I played for a while and moved through the months and the quarters and made a bunch of people happy by giving them a weird looking worm and a hot dog. I'm just not sure where it ends up, but I feel like Wilmots Warehouse is much more about the journey than it is the destination. The game is $15, but it's definitely not for everyone. I could see a bunch of you buying it and feeling like it's a totally hollow experience. The music is pretty sweet. You can play 2-player co-op, but again, I don't really know what you're trying to achieve. In a world where everything is about boss battles, high scores, and more, separating stuff and trying to be organized feels a little weird, but also kind of nice. My time playing Wilmots Warehouse whizzed by, and while I don't know if I actually accomplished anything, I felt better about myself and my day when I was done. Sometimes it's these weird games from undefined or non-existent genres that surprise you the most, because it's so crazy to think that in a million years, I never would have come up with Wilmots Warehouse. And yet, people did. Here it is, a full game. Their one-of-a-kind originality not only built this pretty cool game, but it's probably earning them a few bucks as well. What's kind of creepy is that Wilmots Warehouse went a lot like my real life. In the beginning, everything was super organized. I had a place for all the different products. I separated them so nicely, had individual categories, knew where everything was. And then after a couple months, I was like, screw it, I don't know, it's gonna be everywhere. Let it live and breathe and exist. No rhyme, no reason. I'm sure I'll find a way to get it done. Procrastination is the station. And that basically describes every single project I've ever started in the real world. All In Games has another title that they asked me to try out. And while it's still very difficult, like Little Racer, it has a style and tone all its own. It is crazy, irreverent, and in your face. But it also requires that perfection. And that's what I enjoyed about Space Cows. The fact that I had to be perfect if I wanted to progress, kind of like those slot car races over in Little Racer. It's an arcadey twin-stick shooter that will definitely appeal to those with a sense of humor, and those of you who are obsessed with milk. You are a very milk-obsessed man, floating through space, trying to save the cows and take down a lot of ugly green goo. You'll accomplish this by launching your plunger weapon, by collecting as much milk as you can, and by hugging cows, dragging them into a minigame, because that's what you do in outer space. The cow-infused minigames are simple and reflex-based, but boy are you gonna be excited when you see one, because the reward is another life, and you're gonna need a bunch of those. This game has very few checkpoints, and in an old school arcade style, wants you to be near perfect. Thankfully, they include a slow motion ability for you to dodge incoming enemies or fire off one more plunge, but I could not believe a game this silly was also this tough. There's a whole lot of satisfaction when you beat a level in Space Cows, because you know you just accomplished something super tricky, and you must have played near perfect to get the job done. You'll enter an arena with 1 life, and you know you can't mess up. You'll clear out an entire wave of enemies, feel pretty good about things, notice that you're so close to another milk-infused extra life, and then they'll just pour more and more at you. Space Cows is relentless. It does not care if you're about to die. It's gonna send 10 more enemies after you, and then 10 more, and then 10 more. And sometimes it'll introduce new foes out of nowhere, and you'll be like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I gotta react, I gotta be quick. And when you do, you feel like such a pro. I think why Space Cows and Tiny Racer stand out to me is because they're so demanding. In an era where games often gift you the victory, these 2 titles push you to your limit. And sometimes that's very fun and needed. It's finally the part of the show where I get to talk about heaveho. Oh boy, this game is a blast. It's one of those quirky, weirdo, local multiplayer games that you're gonna love. You're gonna love because it's so freaking weird. And similar to Wilmots Warehouse, it's super important that I talk about the experience of this game rather than the bullet points. It's real simple on the surface. You have 2 hands. You grab and you grab. That's it. But it's wacky fun, and it's so perfect for any group, any ages. If you play with someone competent and gaming skilled, then you can race through and see how far you can go as the challenges get trickier and trickier. But if you play with maybe someone who's not, like my girlfriend who's terrible at heaveho, we still have a blast because the characters are so much fun to manipulate. It starts off by picking your face, by picking your hair, by picking your sunglasses, and by picking your voice, and pay attention to the voice. There's no story in heaveho, but that's the sound you're gonna hear as they scream and yell as you make them fling and fall to their doom. And when they're doomed, they burst. And when they burst, it covers your friends in your own gooey color. Also, birds come and poop on you, completely obscuring your eyes, but not obscuring your ability to have fun. It's tactile. I love stuff like this, where it's just simple inputs that yield so many different options and so much genuine laughter and fun. It's the perfect icebreaker game. It's the perfect about face after spending hours with Gears 5 or Borderlands 3. This is a super silly game and another outstanding effort from Devolver Digital. Whoever is the person in charge of picking the games, they're like the Wizard of Oz because they grab so many interesting titles. And almost always, they're freaking great. heaveho probably has no business being this good, but at $10, it trades exclusively in awesome times. I'll grab my girlfriend's hand and swing her back and forth in the game, of course, and I swing her back and forth and I launch her and she forgets which hand is which, and so she could grab on, but she presses the wrong hand and she falls to her doom, and it's so much fun. Even if it takes us 5 minutes to complete the simplest of stages, it's so wacky and wild, and these characters move so wonderfully, it just feels good to grab a hold. And you not only grab a hold of platforms and objects, but each other. It's about that embrace. Human touch, baby. It's so important, and heaveho gets this. It knows it, and it delivers it back to you in a beautiful, resounding eShop hit. Last but not least, we've got Plunge, another super stylish dungeon game. Except this time, instead of pinball, it's all turn-based and roguelike. Now, I'm gonna stab it in its heart before I show you why this creature is so cuddly, and say that it kind of feels like a mobile game. But it's $8, and there's more depth than initially meets the eye. You're gonna be sliding across these quick dungeon floors, and I love that it doesn't waste any of your time. You can fly through 20 or 30 real fast. You're trying to take out enemies, avoid traps, collect keys, and get to the next floor. Plunge your way down to the next little level. But what starts out simply, where you just make sure your health doesn't hit 0, you grab the key and you get out of there, eventually evolves into puzzling movement tricks and dicey combat scenarios. You'll eventually acquire potions and abilities that modify your run and help you out. In a cool twist, you can even sacrifice said abilities and save them for a future run, paying it forward and putting them on a character that they may fit better with. There's a bunch of different plunge people that all have their own attributes and contribute to the variety on display in this game. Drawing another parallel to Creature in the Well, it does get a bit repetitive. But again, it's the super defined style and the unique design decisions that keep me coming back to plunge. As much as I enjoy the speed and flying through the floors, it's when I have to slow things down, plan out my slides, make sure I'm gonna save enough health for that enemy in the corner, and then try to navigate to perfectly hit the key and get the heck out of there, that I feel plunge is really worth its $8. So there's our list. So many sweet games, and how many of them had you even heard of? I'm sure there's at least one here that you weren't aware existed until today. Like when I went on the eShop and I was like, Galasso? Tiny Racer? Never heard of these, but had a ton of fun and at a pretty solid price point. You can't ask for much more than that. It's a phenomenal year for gaming, and I feel like the last few months have been ultra amazing. And I can only hope that that continues until we set sail into another calendar year. But definitely let me know in the comments down below, which of these eShop titles appeals the most to you? Which of these hidden gems would you like to add to your Switch catalog crown? I'd love to hear from you. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. I'm gonna keep digging through the deep waters of the eShop, and if I find more cool ones, I'll bring them your way. But until that time, everybody, thanks again for watching. Have a fantastic freaking day. SwitchForce out.